Welcome to this episode of Sustainability Karma. I'm your host Naina Gautam, and today we have with us Dr. Anjali Acharya. She's the Managing Director of Nature Conservancy India Solutions. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Naina.
What are the Nature's Conservancy key focus areas in India, and how does that align with country's environmental priorities?
We are one of the world's largest conservation organizations, the Nature Conservancy, with a team of over 4,000 global staff, including 1,000 scientists touching down in 81 countries. This organization is embedded in bringing science to influence policy and programs for impact. In India, our work is very much focused on thematic pillars around freshwater conservation, priority landscapes, renewable energy, regenerative agriculture, and natural climate solutions. And these areas all align with India's environmental priorities. Now, the last one, natural climate solutions, this is where our efforts are there in mangrove restoration, particularly in the Sundarbans, in blue carbon systems like mangroves and salt marshes, which are powerful carbon sinks. And this aligns with India's own programs and motivations, especially the ME scheme, the Mangrove Initiative for Shoreline Habitats and Tangible Incomes, which contributes to both climate goals and community well-being. Additionally, as you know, that India's nationally determined contributions, the first update in 2022, included commitments to enhance forest cover, which included mangroves. So that's again the link to government policy.
Would you like to give us a brief overview of your work on mangroves, particularly your involvement with Global Mangrove Alliance?
Mangroves are often called the forests of the sea. And I was reading a recent quotation, which I really thought was very powerful. It's mangroves are guardians of the coast, the silent and quiet sentinels that shield life from the storm. I just found that really powerful. Now in India, this is what we're doing. We're working with local communities and governments to implement restoration projects, enhance coastal resilience, and raise awareness about the importance of mangroves and biodiversity. We're working on 160 hectares plot in the Sundarbans, where we are working with communities, especially women's groups, to ensure that we bring about restoration, but also generate green jobs and build coastal resilience. Now, the Global Mangrove Alliance is a coalition of organizations, including the Nature Conservancy, but also others like WWF, Wetlands International, and IUCN. And together, we are working globally to increase global mangrove cover by 20% by 2030 globally. We have just joined the newly formed Global Mangrove Alliance India chapter, where we will be working with other partners here to draft a future framework and strategy for mangrove restoration in India.
So that also reminds me, during the tsunami, mangroves were of great help. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. They are an amazing barrier against threats like tsunamis.
How does India compare globally in terms of both threats to mangrove and efforts in leveraging their role in climate action?
So India holds about 3% of the world's total mangrove area, placing it amongst the top 10 mangrove-rich nations. We have about 5,000 square kilometers, which are predominantly in West Bengal, which has about 42%, Gujarat, which has another 24% or so, and then Andaman and Nicobar, which is about 12%. Recent scientific assessments have shown that half of the world's mangrove ecosystems are at risk. At risk meaning they're vulnerable or critically endangered. And globally, the main drivers of deforestation are twofold. One, climate change, sea level rise, and stronger storms. And the second is human land conversion, which is shrimp farming, agriculture, urban development. India has the same kinds of threats as globally. So it's climate change, shrimp farming, development, but the intensity is also greater. So let's see, for example, shrimp aquaculture. This is a major culprit in mangrove degradation in states like Andhra Pradesh, sections of Gujarat, sections of West Bengal. You also have sea level rise and increased cyclones, which are particularly dangerous in the southern areas like Tamil Nadu, as well as island like Lakshadweep, which endanger the lives of people as well. And then you have the entire panoply of coastal development and pollution. So you have ports, you have tourism, you have oil spills, everything, people living along the coast who don't particularly live in a responsible manner. But the country is also making really substantial efforts to leverage mangroves towards climate action. And I think India has really recognized the value of mangroves in sequestering carbon, protecting shorelines, and supporting fisheries. And I'd mentioned earlier the Mishti program. Now, this was launched in 2023 and it's ambitious. It aims to restore mangroves across 540 square kilometers in 9 coastal states and 4 union territories by 2028, so in another 3 years' time. There's a budget allocation associated with this. It's almost 18 crore rupees for 2024-25, benefiting several states like Andhra Pradesh, etc. And the funding is also aligned with other national and state level campaigns such as Campa, Menrega, and other related schemes. So India is really working towards restoring and protecting these vital ecosystems and setting an example for other countries.
So coming back to an Indian context, how do nature-based solutions like mangrove conservation measures up against technological interventions in tackling climate challenges?
So, as I mentioned earlier, India is facing the same threats that globally the world's mangroves are facing: rising sea levels, cyclones, saltwater intrusion, etc. All these are climate risks as well as human development risks. Now, India has been investing heavily in what is called grey infrastructure, right? The concrete, the embankments, etc. And their long-term resilience is quite limited. Nature-based solutions, particularly mangrove restoration, offers a powerful alternative that combines coastal defense, climate mitigation, biodiversity conservation, and livelihood protection. What we have seen in India as well as in other countries is that nature-based solutions really outperform the more traditional grey infrastructure. So think about seawalls and embankments, and let me give a few examples. Let's take coastal protection. So you have seawalls and embankments which protect along narrow zones, and often during major cyclones they're overtopped and they're damaged and they need to be rebuilt. Now, coastal protection from mangroves absorb storm surges. They reduce the wave height by up to 66%, and they're also self-repairing. So these are some of the examples that are really important in comparing and contrasting green and grey infrastructure. Another one is carbon sequestration, right? So mangroves, they are major carbon sinks, which are 4 times more carbon sequestration per hectare than tropical forests. So they are major absorbers of carbon. On the other hand, grey infrastructure actually emit carbon during construction and no sequestration capacity. Another example, biodiversity conservation. Mangroves support something like 5,700 species in India and are crucial for fisheries and birds. Of course, seawalls fragment ecosystems, and they can also worsen erosion. So these are just some examples, and what India's best foot forward would be in developing integrated hybrid systems with mangroves forming the first line of defense, supported by grey infrastructure. So it's not either or. It is the best idea is to have a combination of the both.
How important is the role of mangroves in achieving sustainable development goals?
So mangroves actually touch down on many different sustainable development goals. So let's take SDG 13, which is on climate action. So mangroves contribute to that by sequestering carbon and mitigating climate change. Let's also take SDG 14, life below water. Again, mangroves are providing habitat for marine life and supporting fisheries. Other few are SDG 11 on sustainable cities. A lot of cities are along the coastal line, and SDG 15, life on land. So mangroves enhance coastal resilience and supporting these. So by protecting and restoring mangroves, we are simultaneously advancing on several of the MDGs.
What kind of policy reforms or financing models are needed to scale up nature-based climate solutions like mangrove restoration in India?
So there are many opportunities to bring about policy reforms relating to mangrove restoration in India. For example, the National Adaptation Fund for Climate Change and the Green India Mission now already prioritize nature-based solutions, especially in coastal zones. You have the Mishti scheme, which explicitly recognizes mangroves as a frontline climate buffer, and you have the Coastal Regulation Zone Notification, which protects ecologically sensitive mangrove areas. There are many areas where one can improve the alignment with these different policy measures, as well as do things like tenure policy, clarity of tenure, co-management rights, etc. And then we come to the entire gamut of financing. And I just want to touch down a little bit more on the issue of financing, because this is an area of immense innovation that can be brought about. So we have innovative financing models such as green bonds, carbon credits, public-private partnership, which can really mobilize resources for large-scale restoration projects as well as sustainably finance. You don't want a one-and-done kind of financing that comes in. So let's go into a little bit more detail. So blended finance, what does this mean? This brings about combining public grants like CAMPA, MISHTI, etc., combining that with private sector CSR funds, bringing in funding from multilateral funds like GEF, the Green Climate Fund, the Adaptation Fund, as well as philanthropy. So that's whole blended finance. The second is blue carbon markets. And here there is the potential to develop a verified carbon credit protocol for mangroves under India's own voluntary carbon market framework, and to pilot different kinds of community carbon projects in the Sundarbans. We have started with one exercise there, and we're hoping that that will develop into the potential to explore blue carbon financing that can be there for it. Couple of other examples is payment for ecosystem services, where you set up payments to communities in exchange for their maintenance of the mangrove ecosystems, and starting to develop green bonds. And this is a new and emerging area, and there's an opportunity here, I think, to build project pipelines along with support from NABARD and others. So you can really get local communities involved in decision making and benefit sharing.
So that is a large market in development, and I mean, it's very interesting to know that mangroves can also play a role in that. So what are the key barriers to implementing nature-based climate solutions at scale, especially in ecological sensitive coastal areas?
So here I'd like to draw on a few studies just to tell us the magnitude of the opportunity here. So the Nature Conservancy estimates that something like 17 billion US dollars per year in flood protection benefits alone can be derived from mangroves in some of the studied regions. So just looking at the global experience and seeing what it can bring to India, here are some of the key takeaways. Market-driven financing can be important. So you can look at different kinds of tools like carbon credits. You can have data-driven decision making. So bringing together different kinds of data to map out which areas are most suitable for mangrove restoration and what types of mangroves. Integrated infrastructure. We talked earlier about green and grey infrastructure. How do we pair mangroves with reefs and embankments to maximize the resilience as well as ecological value? So we have many examples of these kind of parametric mangrove insurance. For example, in Mexico, we've done some work on blue carbon protocols in the Caribbean. We've done hybrid infrastructure in Florida and Indonesia. There are community PES models from Indonesia and Kenya. So this is all areas that India can draw on and even go further in terms of innovations. Now, some of the barriers, let's get to that point, like the barriers. What are some of the barriers? In being able to roll out these kind of mangrove restoration and protection measures, there's several barriers. One is, of course, institutional overlap. You have many different state agencies and local government agencies that are involved in mangrove restoration, whether it's to do with the planting of the trees or the zoning of the area or the land or the assets or the people, their livelihoods, etc. So you need to start to unbundle that. Another one is on lack of blue carbon finance potential, right? The mechanism. So India has not yet issued a mangrove carbon credit, and this is great. This is a great opportunity to start to move in that direction. There's sometimes you see insecure land tenure for mangrove zones. So if you're going to do mangrove restoration, you need to know who owns the land. Are there clear demarcations, whether it's government-owned land, community-owned land, etc. You also have the opportunity to improve on the monitoring, right? There isn't right now in place a national map of restoration ready mangrove sites for species suitability. So what you need to have is a mangrove mapping to see what is where, etc. And this is something that we at the Nature Conservancy in India are starting to build a geo lab, which will start to map out the different mangroves, of course, working with government research institutions and the relevant government ministries to really just map out not only where mangroves can be planted, but what kind of mangroves, what are the suitability of that, what is the species. It's not a monoculture. There are many different kinds of species and what is suitable where. And then starting to build long-term community incentives. This becomes really important, engaging communities, because otherwise, after you bring in that requisite financing, who will take it forward? You need to incentivize communities at all levels to be engaged in the local mangrove ownership.
So you talked about communities. So how can local communities, particularly youth, be more effectively engaged in mangrove restoration and protection efforts?
So I think it's really important to engage local communities, and the youth are our future. We need to get them engaged in both mangrove restoration and protection efforts through a variety of efforts such as education, capacity building, and employment opportunities. Environmental education programs in schools and communities can raise their level of awareness. You can train the youth, and additionally starting to create a pipeline of green jobs. And here are some ideas that we can sort of allude to. You can have a mangrove champion network which can train youth leaders in coastal villages and schools, and they can be sort of as restoration ambassadors. You can have green skills and livelihood trainings where you can have vocational courses on mangrove nursery management, restoration techniques. You can also train them in GIS and GPS mapping and different kinds of carbon sampling protocols. You can have eco-education and field schools where you can take the children out into, as part of the school curriculum, and include mangrove ecology into their thing and create mangrove learning hubs. Everybody's interested. I have 2 kids. They're very interested in digital, like using mobile apps. So there's a lot of mobile apps to see how you can map out sections and monitor sections and really start to build on citizen science. How can people really use those digital systems, the AI, etc., to be able to bring in the right kind of excitement amongst the youth? You need to get them engaged and excited. As the youth grow older, it would be really important to try to think about eco-entrepreneurship support. So how do you have youth-led businesses in mangrove-related products? So you can have honey, you can have arts and crafts, you can have nature tourism. How can you provide some kind of seed financing to get them some startup grants, and they can get excited about not only preserving the mangroves, but also being able to get jobs and revenue from that preservation. And finally, India is, rich in culture and traditions. Why not include festivals and street plays and folk art events all around the concept of mangrove conservation? And this is particularly important in the coastal states where you have this. So looking at youth podcasts and social media, etc., this would be a great way to be able to bring the youth in and get them to really understand the value of the mangroves and actually invest in a career in that.
Well, since World Mangrove Day is today, what message you would like to give to our listeners?
I think mangrove restoration and protection is absolutely critical, but it needs to be seen in the larger scheme of what we're trying to do in the conservation and climate space. And I would like to just quote from Sylvia Earle, who's a world famous marine biologist, and she said, "The loss of mangroves is not just the loss of trees, but the unraveling of entire ecosystems." And that really becomes important. It's not just the mangroves themselves, but it is also the ecosystems that they harbor and the livelihoods and the people that depend on those ecosystems. We're hoping to have a webinar on mangrove restoration on World Mangroves Day, and we're really looking forward to a future where we work even more collaboratively with the governments, both at the national level and the state and local level, and amplify and bring in examples, global examples of mangrove restoration, and move India forward on a pathway where mangroves are thriving ecosystems which also contribute jobs, livelihoods, and ecological benefits for all.
So just 3 very short things about mangroves which may be interesting to someone who doesn't know anything about it.
Mangroves are, critical ecosystems for biodiversity and for coastal resilience. Mangroves have immense carbon sequestration potential and therefore can be seen as a potential pathway to also bring in carbon finance. And finally, mangroves is also an economic solution because, as we've seen, incorporating mangroves as natural barriers are actually more cost effective than many of the hard concrete only measures. So from an ecological, from an economic, and from a social perspective, mangroves is really it's a big bet. And India, being the voice of the global south, can go a long way towards really amplifying what it can do here and showcasing it to other countries in the world.
So in short, we can write mangrove space, the big bet.
Yes, maybe. There's so many big bets.
So thank you so much for such an insightful conversation.
No, thank you very much, Naina. It was a pleasure to be on your podcast.
This is Naina Gautam signing off for Sustainability Karma.
Like this program, we look forward to your feedback on our WhatsApp number 9818120554. For participation in this program, write to us at sustainability.karma@gmail.com. Looking forward to meet you again at the same time next week with a new episode and a new guest. Till then, goodbye from all of us. Sustainability Karma.